Hey, classmates, are you ready to eat your lechon rice while I milk your brain cows?
Hey, that reminds of the grub.
Are you stupid?
No, but you know what was stupid?
LeBron being knocked out first round in the playoffs.
No, Gruggy, you!
Whatever. Can we jump to the actual information now?
Sure, Gruggy. Let's talk about topics 2.2 and 8.2.
Isn't 2.2 about the Mongol Empire and 8.2 about the Cold War?
Yeah, they're so fascinating.
Let's jump into topic 2.2 first, the Mongol Empire.
A few moments later.
So tell me about topic 2.2.
Well, topic 2.2 is described as the Mongol Empire, with the most notable people being Genghis Khan, or for us, LeKahn, who was the mastermind behind it all, Kublai Khan, who founded the Yuan dynasty in China, Marco,
Hello.
who is an Italian traveler, Ibn Battuta, who is a Moroccan Islamic traveler, and Tamerlane, who is a Turco-Mongol conqueror.
So what can you tell me about the actual Mongol Empire?
Well, they were feared across Asia and the Middle East.
Why is that?
Well, for starters, they were ruthless. They would wipe out entire villages and towns just because their leader disagreed with LeKahn.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and because of that, even bigger countries bowed to their rule, such as India.
That's astounding.
5 big booms. Boom! 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 Boom!
Oh, over here. I think we're safe down here. Oh my god, bro, that was scary. I don't know what we would have done.
I don't know.
Dude, those booms are getting loud. Keep going about topic 2.2. What else happened?
Well, Mongol authorities used the paisa or paisi to signify authority.
Why?
To attract foreign or overseas merchants and talents, the great Khans gave them paisa, exempting them from taxes and allowing them to use relay stations. Most of these merchants were business partners of the Mongols, known as Ortok.
What about after the empire split into the 4 Lakhanates?
Well, the Pax Mongolica started, which is a term modeled after the original phrase Pax Romana, which describes the stabilizing effects of the conquests of the Mongol Empire on the social, cultural, and economic life of the inhabitants of the vast Eurasian territory that the Mongols conquered in the 13th and 14th centuries. The term is used to describe the ease, communication, and commerce that the unified administration helped to create in the period of relative peace that followed the Mongols' vast and violent conquests. The conquest of Genghis Khan and his successors, spanning from Southeast Asia all the way to Eastern Europe, effectively took over the Eastern world with the Western world. The Silk Road, connecting trade centers across Asia and Europe, came under the sole rule of the Mongol Empire. It was commonly said that a maiden bearing a nugget of gold on her head could wander safely throughout the realm. Despite the political fragmentation of the Mongol Empire into 4 Khanates, nearly a century of conquest and civil war was followed by relative stability in the early 14th century. The end of the Pax Mongolica was marked by the disintegration of the Khanates and the outbreak of the Black Death in Asia, which spread along trade routes to much of the world in the mid-14th century.
Well, how did they help facilitate trade?
Well, because of their power, they were able to control the trade along the Silk Road and stop robberies and bandits along the way.
Did that help the world develop at all?
Well, by facilitating diffusion, they allowed for technologies to diffuse as well, along with luxury items that otherwise wouldn't have made it.
So apart from murdering whole villages, they were pretty okay at getting the British their silk.
Well, as okay as you could be back then. Nobody was really okay without LeBron. But also on the Silk Road, caravans with Chinese silk, pepper, ginger, cinnamon, and nutmeg came from the west Spice Islands via the transcontinental trade routes. Eastern diets were introduced to Europeans as well. Weapons, carpets, and leather goods from Iran were sold to Europeans. Gunpowder was also introduced to Europe from China. In the opposite direction, Europeans sent silver, fine cloth, horses, linen, and other goods to the Near and Far East. Increasing trade and commerce meant that the respective nations and societies increased their exposure to new goods and markets, thus increasing the GDP of each nation or society that was involved in the trade system. Many of the cities participating in the 13th century world trade system grew rapidly in size.
So they were absolutely crucial to the development of the world back then?
Yes, they were.
Alright, let's shift and let's talk about topic 8.2, the Cold War.
Give me an elevator pitch for the Cold War.
The Cold War was a period of rivalry between the United States and the USSR, who emerged as superpowers following the end of World War II. They competed in everything: space, science, development, and ideology.
Interesting. Tell me more about ideology.
Well, the United States is a capitalist economy which is found in mostly democratic countries, while the USSR used communism.
Explain communism.
It's a communal system where people can't own the means for production, and the government controls the ins and outs of resources. In theory, everyone should get a fair share of the resources, but in reality, the government always steals from the people.
Well, has it ever worked?
Some people created smaller communes with only a small amount of people, but almost always a leader would emerge.
Where did that idea come from?
It came from the Communist Manifesto by Engels and Marx.
I don't think LeBron likes that.
Well, actually, basketball has its ties to the Cold War.
How so?
Well, the 1972 Olympic men's basketball final was the last game of that year's Olympic basketball tournament between the US and the USSR. It became one of the most controversial events in Olympic history.
Do tell.
Well, the ending was mirrored in controversy, with the USSR defeating the Team USA by 1 point, marking the latter's first ever loss in the event. Both the US and the Soviet Union won their first 8 games of the tournament, with the Olympic team having its overall Olympic record at 63-0 when they advanced to the final against the USSR. The final 3 seconds of the game were watched back multiple times under questionable rule interpretations. However, it led to the ultimate victory by the USSR. The result of the game is still disputed to this day, with widespread allegations of political corruption.
Wow, all of that over basketball?
Yeah, they pretty much fought over everything.
Wait, what's that?
There's a letter from the GOAT, LeBron!
Read it.
Hello there, friends. I'm here to announce that the overall GOAT of basketball is... Wrong picture! Get the GOAT back!
Looking for James. He's got it.
Wow, LeBron is just so cool. What else happened during the Cold War?
Well, the arms race is the other major event. It started with the creation of the atomic bomb, followed by the usage of those bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, the arms race then started with the creation of the hydrogen bombs next, which used fusion instead of fission in the bomb. This resulted in a much bigger explosion and much more potential.
How did this affect the Cold War?
Well, this was the most pressing thing. The world had enough nukes to destroy the world 10 times over. This led to the threat of mutually assured destruction, scaring everyone worldwide. This led to the creation of nuclear bunkers and things like drills in schools. This was very alarming and very scary. No one could have predicted the level in which a nuclear attack would destroy the world.
Damn, that's terrible. I couldn't imagine living in that time period.
Yeah, we have it pretty good now.
Well, what else happened in the Cold War? The arms race couldn't be the only thing.
Well, the space race was also happening at that time.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Good evening, and welcome to Turning Points, the game of history. I'm Nick. Tonight, we turn our attention to a conflict that redefines science, power, and the future itself, the space race. But before we dive into the reenactment, we're joined by 2 guests, voices from the 1950s, both offering insight from both sides of the divide. With us tonight are a U.S. Cold War strategist and a Soviet aerospace scientist. They each offer the nation's unique perspective as tensions rise and eyes turn to the sky.
Thank you. In the wake of World War II, the stakes could not be higher. We're not just racing for space, we're racing for control and for influence. Spaceflight means missile technology, it means intelligence, and of course, it means power.
From our side, the story is the same, but with a different motive. We seek to prove the superiority of our socialist system. Our engineers, our cosmonauts, our rockets, they represent more than science. They represent our ideology.
So space becomes more than a frontier. It becomes a battlefield of symbols. Democracy versus communism, open societies versus state-planned systems. Did either of you anticipate just how far this would go?
Not at first, but as soon as we launched Sputnik, we knew the world was watching, and neither side was blinking.
Once we heard that satellite signal, we understood we weren't just behind, we were exposed. That moment changed everything.
And with that, the race begins. Coming up next, the reenactment of a decade of tension, triumph, and technology that changed the world. Good evening, and welcome to a special edition of Turning Points, the game of history. I'm Nick.
And I'm Will. Tonight's showdown isn't about victory in battle, it's about power, prestige, and pushing the limits of what's possible.
Our stage is the vast emptiness of space. Our players, 2 superpowers, locked in ideological conflict after World War II. The year is 1957. The world watches the sky. The USSR sends its first artificial satellite into Earth's orbit. They are the first to reach space. The world changed in an instant. The US's response was swift, urgent, and necessary.
The U.S. forms NASA in 1958, a civilian space agency armed with a mission: catch up, then lead.
But the USSR moves faster still. This is seen in 1961, when Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, one orbit around the Earth, one giant leap for socialism.
But they do not fall behind forever. President Kennedy sets the goal: land a man on the moon before the decade is over.
And so begins the most dramatic phase of the space race.
The USSR sends probes to Venus, Mars, and the moon. They break record after record.
But the US perfects guidance systems, life support, and the physics of landing and return. They learn and they build.
And then, July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, we land on the moon.
A defeat, but a milestone for all of humanity.
In the end, the space race was more than competition. It was proof of what we're capable of when we strive, when we reach, when we believe.
But let us not forget the cost. This race was born from fear, and it was forged in conflict, and yet it gave us the stars. Thank you for joining us on Turning Point, the game of history. Until next time, look up.
Transition.
Classmates, we hope you enjoyed your LeKahn race. We hope you learned something about today's video, or at least found the GOAT LeBron interesting. Now, let's rest our brain cows and watch the sunset.
Hey, that rhymes with grug.